Hey everybody, this is Darren with WTD Equipment. I'm the shop foreman here, and we're going to cover some daily maintenance and inspections that you're going to do on your machine prior to using it at your job site. So we're going to start off obviously with the bucket. So if you have a 2-man aluminum or a fiberglass bucket, you want to inspect for cracked welds, debris in the basket, any sort of damage to the safety lever for the ladder getting in or out, to make sure you're not going to have any sort of problems when you're up in the air. The next thing we're going to check is your restraint harnesses here to make sure that, again, no welds are broken, that these are intact and they're present. Moving on down the line, actually we're going to come up here. So you're always going to check every safety, every e-stop prior to using the machine. We'll start it up here, hit it, it'll kill the engine, then you're going to move to the chassis, and also if you're going to use a wireless remote, hit that one as well to make sure that they all work in the case of an emergency. We're going to check every pivot pin to make sure none of these bolts are loose. These nuts, they have a tamper-proof orange, so that'll easily indicate whether these have started to back loose or not. Moving on, we're going to go to the hydraulic tank. We're going to check our fluid level. Now, the proper way to check this fluid level is with all the booms cradled, your outriggers completely up, and your tracks in. So the machine is as low as down to the ground as possible. And then you're going to check your oil level, and we want to be at the mark, but typically we want to be between 1/2 and 3/4 of the sight glass. Moving on, we're going to check for any sort of obvious leaks coming from this electrical pump down here. We're also going to check all structural welds of the machine as we're doing our safety circle. So we're going to look at all of the welds for the outriggers, all of them for the booms. We're going to look for any obvious damage just doing a complete circle. Now with that, you're also going to check on the outriggers. You're going to check these safety pins as well. And then you're also going to check your foot pads. You want to make sure that there's no obvious damage for your pivot ball up here. And then you want to make sure that all of these guards are intact to where when these deploy, these won't slide off of your actual foot. Coming around, you're going to check your tracks. You're going to check for cracks, splits, any sort of damage, excessive flatness, anything that would cause you to have some sort of malfunction while you're tracking the unit to your job site. Again, when you're looking underneath the machine, you're going to look for any obvious drips, leaks. When you have the outriggers down and deployed, you can lift the chassis all the way up, and you would be very easy to look under the entire machine for any damaged hoses, obvious leaks, anything of the sort. We're going to continue to go back. We're going to check our fuel level to make sure that we have adequate fuel, so when we're up in the air, we're not going to have to basically refuel, so you don't have a shutdown when you're up there. You're going to check your coolant level in the engine, and then you're going to check your oil level as well. While you're there, you have the cover off. You might as well check your belt tension to make sure it's not excessively loose, and then that there's no fuel leaks or oil leaks coming from your engine either. Coming around the knuckle side of the machine, this would actually be technically the front of the machine, so engine coming towards me. You're going to check these hoses here. This would be referred to as the knuckle. You're going to check the hoses for obvious, chafing, hose leaks, anything of the sort. Make sure all these harnesses aren't getting pinched in any of these points here. If you have any excessive debris that are up in the upper boom, we're going to want to obviously clean that out as best as possible. Usually compressed air coming from the front of the machine back is the best way to do it. Keeping up on that daily is going to really prevent excessive buildup in the booms, and actually what will happen is it'll prevent the upper boom from coming back all the way, and then it'll lock you out and you won't know why. And it's because you have too much buildup and it's not allowing the boom to come all the way back. And the lower boom is the exact same way, except it happens over at the front of the machine. Coming over here, we have our dog bones, which is just a support for the lower boom to the upper boom. Again, we're going to check all of our hardware, anything on the machine. It all is going to have this tamper-proof orange mark on it, and it's an easy indicator to see if something's been backing loose. We're going to keep going on here. Again, we're still checking for leaks. On this side, we're going to check for cracks as well. All your main welds. Obviously, these newer machines, they have the upgraded boom, the re-engineered. So the service bulletin that we were doing before on the older machines is not present, but you still want to check, obviously, all welds, and that's on any sort of mobile elevated working platform. We're going to come over here to our turret rotation motor. We're going to check for any leaks here. I've seen some issues with that, so obviously take your hand, run it underneath, make sure it's not leaking from right in here. There's a couple O-rings. We're going to check this side track as well for any splits or cracks or any sort of obvious defect that would cause it to come off or to break while you're using it. And then we're going to be back here to the front of the machine. And from here, we're going to check this area as well. We're going to check for any chafing in these hoses or electrical harnesses. And pretty much that's going to be it. Once you have the outriggers deployed and the machine's up in the air, you have a lot more availability to check underneath the machine for your daily inspections. And as a rule of thumb, what I would actually do just to make sure that you're in a good stable platform, before I got in the bucket, I would actually test run it with the remote. It's very important to have the remote with you when you call me for diagnostic help or trying to get you down with the emergency functions, because that's the first thing I'm going to ask. It gives you tons of information regarding outrigger pressure sensors. If one of them maybe fell down because of soft ground or shifted, it gives you all the error code lists that I'm going to need to help you diagnose and get you back in to prevent your downtime, I said. Other than that, once you're test flying it, you can obviously look at your chains, make sure that they look tight, they're not excessively loose. And then another thing to check actually is these boom wearables. So these actually get neglected quite often. You should be probably adjusting them roughly every 200 to 400 hours. You would just basically loosen this nut and hold it, and then you would take a flathead screwdriver and then basically drive this in until it touches the boom. It doesn't need to be excessively tight, but it keeps everything true and centered. They're a wear point, so they will need to be replaced, but you probably won't have to replace them for at least 1,000 hours. Keeping those obviously nice and true and centered is going to prevent excess sway when you're up in the basket, as well as just keep everything nice and centered and nice and smooth as it was when you bought it from factory. Another thing to check, because when you're switching out buckets, is to absolutely make sure that your safety pin is in here. There's a safety pin that obviously comes in from the side here. It comes through, it's got a cotter pin lock, and then it hits a safety switch here. Other than that, that's pretty much all you're going to be checking, other than just basic functionality, and that would be it for your daily inspections.